Inhale, exhale.
Oh, hello.
Good afternoon. This is a meeting of the Auburn School Committee, August 19, 2020. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Do we have any citizens' comments this afternoon? Seeing none, I will now turn it over to Dr. Hanfield for special recognitions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everyone in the listening audience this afternoon. Yes, unfortunately, we start with a special recognition, and it's a in memoriam for Janet LaPrade. Janet LaPrade, 81, of Warren and formerly of Auburn, passed away peacefully on August 8th, 2020. She was born in Worcester and raised in Auburn. Janet was one of 12 children born to the late Frank and Irma Thomas. She attended the Auburn schools prior to meeting her beloved Martin J. LaPrade. They were married in 1957 and settled in their hometown of Auburn to raise their family. Later on, Janet worked as a cook for the lunch program at Packagug School for many years, and really embraced that role in working with Auburn school children. Along with her husband, Martin, Janet leaves 3 sons, including Peter LaPrade, who's our current girls ice hockey coach, and his wife, Donna, a former IA at Packagug School, 1 daughter, her 5 grandchildren, including Nicole Vecchio, who was a foreign language teacher at Auburn High School, and 8 great-grandchildren. So if we can just pause for a moment of silence, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I would now seek approval of the minutes of 8/12/2020.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis? Mrs. Harrington?
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
And Mr. Scobie, yes. It is a vote. And now I turn it back over again to Dr. Hanfield for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to let everyone know that the fall special town meeting has been scheduled. At the Selectmen's meeting on August 10th, the board voted to schedule the fall special town meeting for Tuesday, October 27th, 2020. The Board of Selectmen also voted to open the October 27, 2020 special town meeting warrant on Monday, August 17, 2020, and to close the warrant on Tuesday, September the 8th, 2020. Any warrant articles we have will be brought forward at next week's meeting for your approval. Cecilia is working on those right now. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you.
Moving down the list, Town of Auburn travel restriction policy. I had provided you with a draft copy of this last week. Town Manager Jacobson has informed us that the attached travel restriction policy is in effect for all Town of Auburn employees. We will be, with your approval, revising these forms to remove references to town and replace them with Auburn Public Schools, as well as removing the comp time from the town form. We don't offer comp time to anyone in the Auburn Public Schools. And we would be using those forms with any of our staff members that would be seeking to travel out of state. They'd have to have these files on form with us for our records.
Okay, I would entertain that motion.
Make a motion to adopt the Town of Auburn travel restriction policy as presented with the noted changes to be made to reflect the policy for the Auburn Public Schools, and the policy will be in effect until such time as the governor lifts his order.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Meg, I don't think your mic is working.
Oh, it's not? You can't hear me?
It is now.
Now we
But I don't know if you were trying to make that motion, but
I couldn't hear it. Okay.
yeah, I couldn't hear it. Just wanted to let you know.
Thanks.
Okay. Roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis,
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington,
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman,
Yes.
And Mr. Scobie, yes. That is a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, before you for action is the updated school calendar for the fiscal year 2021. This calendar that's before you is reflective of the 10 school days, or excuse me, the 10 days prior to the start of school on September the 16th. That DESE worked out with the MTA and then has subsequently been sent down to towns and cities to negotiate, not really negotiate, but implement with their local agencies. So you'll see that the 10 days are accounted for August 31st through the September the 15th. There are two additional planning days that are in the calendar. One at the end of the second trimester, one at the end of the first trimester, one at the end of the second trimester. And those were regularly scheduled district days that were bumped by the 10 that were sent from the state. And we're using each of those days for teachers to regroup and just be able to plan and do anything else that they need to do prior to the start of the new trimester across the schools. That's pretty much the changes to that calendar.
I would entertain a motion to accept.
I'll make that motion to accept the revised school calendar for the fiscal year 2021.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Any discussion on that?
Through the chair, just a quick question on the half days. So it would be professional development in the afternoon.
Correct.
I'm looking, most of those are on Monday or Tuesday, correct? Except for one on January 15th.
Correct.
Okay, so that will impact our cohort A a little bit more than cohort B, probably.
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, just the way that we went and set things up, we were trying not to deviate from the existing calendar we had sent out to families too much. So yeah, there'll still be a little bit of that.
For the chair, I have one question also just about snow days, because I know different systems are doing it different ways.
Sure.
Much to the kids' dismay, are we entertaining the idea of maybe having our kids still do remote classes on snow days?
Well, so
I'm not necessarily in favor for that either. I'm just
yeah. Well, I will
different
tell you.
districts are doing it
Yeah,
right now.
I will tell you that the state said that under the current system that we have now, if districts elected to enact snow days as remote learning days, that you wouldn't obviously have to make them up on the tail end. As we talked about that internally here, I think one of the things that was very obvious to us through the last school year was, people still need their time, whether the kids need their time off the computer, whether the teachers need their time off the computer. So we wanted to be overly, I think, sensitive to giving people a break because as we move into the coming school year, there's going to be a lot of time on screen. As we've discussed before, kids are essentially going to school through this virtual medium. So the other thing that we would have run into, shouldn't necessarily would have run into it, but again, we were trying to stay consistent with what we've done in the past. And if families had any vacations or anything or plans, to go away, you wouldn't think that they would have that many. But we've had a few inquiries from families that are still planning to do vacations or they have family other things that have to happen. So we really were just trying to keep the calendar pretty much as squared away as we could without too much disruption to it.
Okay, no, that's great. Thank you. I'll have a very happy 8th grader.
Well, to pay me now, pay me later. I mean, it's,
Right.
but we figured
Right.
they could pay us later. So let's see.
Great.
Any other comments? Roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis? Mrs. Harrington?
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman?
Yes.
And Mr. Scobie, yes. That is a vote. And we now move on to unfinished business.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you know, as we've been talking about quite extensively over the last several weeks, we're preparing for our return to school in September. Last week, you took a motion to release the return to school plan out to families and for principals to utilize in their video town halls this coming week. We've, for the most part, I mean, there's always going to be, and this is why we sent it out in draft form for the next 2 weeks. There's obviously going to be a period of comment, you know, from families and things like that. But, you know, there's a few things here and there that we were looking at, just, you know, start times and things like that. But overall, the commentary that I've received has been positive from families. Of course, there are still questions, you know, in the town hall videos that will be going out the end of the week will answer hopefully a lot of the questions families have. We've been meeting every week, we've been meeting every day this week around the videos, and schools are have already received somewhere between 150 to 180 questions from families in each school, and we're finding a lot of repetition, and so we're able to group those together, and so those will be addressed through you know, through the video process as we talked about last week, and then any outstanding questions. Families will have an opportunity to submit those to building principals for live town halls starting next week. On Friday, I will have out a message to the community that will talk about the days and times of the live town halls, and also to let them know when they can kind of figure out or expect to see class lists, busing information, things like that. That continues to be something that we continue to work on and tweak as we speak. In terms of just some other logistical things that I would be speaking to folks about, I already mentioned busing. In terms of the busing piece, I know we've been talking and hear a lot about, you know, the opportunity to do neighborhood busing. Unfortunately, it's not going to work, and it's not going to work because we have a number of English language learner students, and we have a number of special education students that would be coming to the building 4 days a week. And so it doesn't give us the flexibility on the bus runs to be able to go neighborhood and then go to the other sides of town to get some of those students. So in lieu of that, what we will be doing on Friday, and this is part of my message to the bus around the buses, is if families, you know, have requests, we're going to do our level best to accommodate those requests, so that for childcare or other, you know, considerations, we'll do our level best to handle those, and then get moving on getting bus routes and whatnot squared away for the coming school year. So that's where we are in the busing. With respect to cohort formation, we're using an alpha order, but it's not an alpha order in the traditional, you know, the break points at, say, letter L. We're looking at the numbers of kids who need busing, and so that the busing numbers work appropriately, we have to make sure that we stagger our kids in cohort A and cohort B so that all of our kids who need buses will have an opportunity to get onto the school bus. So that's another layer of this that we're working through right now. But again, through all of that, we're doing our level best to accommodate requests coming in from families. We also have iPads for all of our students. I think, as I mentioned prior in another meeting, Mr. Bouvier is working with school buildings right now in terms of distribution times and pickups so that every child can come and pick up their iPad. And then, as this has been the case as we've been planning for return to school in the fall, the MIAA just voted at noontime to implement fall athletics for our students, with the exception of football and cheerleading. If you've been watching the news the last few days, the state had set forth some new guidelines for youth and adult athletics that also was transposed onto the MIAA and high school athletics. That guidance was then passed to DESE. DESE sent that out to us last night. DESE then was with MIAA this morning, and that was a vote made just a bit ago. It's breaking news on the Telegram. So that's going to add another, just another layer. I don't want to say of complexity, but it's another layer of something we have to think about in terms of, how we operate after school, especially now that we will be entertaining other schools and other teams, and it just it's another layer that we have to think about. So those are the big ticket items that we continue to work through in addition to what's in the return to school plan itself. The other issue that we feel confident we will be able to accommodate is afternoon satellite for our families. We do not feel that we're able to do preschool or before school care at this point. We're happy to evaluate it again in October and see where we are once we kind of get into school and get started. But when we looked at the number of students that access our satellite program, for me especially, I have a real concern about what happens to those 200 kids and where do they go and what do they do and what options do families have. So in looking at Auburn High School and looking at Auburn Middle School, through the distancing and everything else, and following all necessary safety procedures and protocols, we can make it happen. And so that's something that families, I'm sure will be happy to hear. So we continue to work at that, but this things are literally happening every day. So I know now the minute that I say that, I know the phone lines are going to start ringing off the hook for a bunch of details. We're not quite there yet, but we will be there by the start of the school year. There's just so many moving pieces, to all of this. Do we have the space? Do we have the staff? Do we have the interest from the community? And those are all three big yeses. And I just really feel like if we can accommodate our families, this is a very difficult time for everybody. And we certainly appreciate how difficult it is for our families, especially around the idea of childcare. So that we're able to do it is a good thing.
Comments or questions?
Through the chair, I just have one. It's just, I hope it doesn't give you a stroke when I ask this, but do you anticipate people then trying to, or having us try to fold in the cohort selection and match that up with sports teams? Is that the idea? I didn't know if MIA gave any guidance or anything about that.
Yeah, no, here's kind of, I think, where we are with that. We went into this with our very best of intentions to keep our cohorts separated from a health standpoint. Everything around us has dismantled that, whether it's sports, whether it's Premier League, hockey teams, soccer, fall baseball, whatever it is. People are all over the place, all over the country, all over the state. And it's at every level, right? It's at every level. It's not just, high school athletics now, but it's at every level. And so, there's just, at this point, things that have happened around us, I'll just leave it at that. Things that have happened around us have really just undermined our ability to have any real control around that. So then you start, because at first we were starting to think about, what is the plausibility of being able to say, for example, take a sibling request from a family that wants one in A and one in B. But at this point, if everything was a controlled environment and everybody was going from home to the bus to school and back again for the night and then back, that'd be one thing. But everything around us is just, no. We have to just rely on the fact that, masks, hand washing, social distancing, being, vigilant with our zip slip, medical information, faculty and staff. We continue to look at our HVAC systems. We have to just trust in the fact that those are the things that are going to keep our kids safe. The reality of it is that with this announcement now, from MIAA, I appreciate it. I get it. Our kids, they've been taken out, taken away from a lot. They need these opportunities. I'm not poo-pooing athletics at all. I'm just expressing that there are so many elements that are happening in society. It's just really making everything that we're trying to do around safety that much more difficult. So the answer is no. That's the long.
That's fair. That was a good answer. No, that's fair. And I was going to be a little worried if you guys were then going to try to shift gears on any work that you had just done and then try to have to reel back in.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, it's August 19th. I mean, the reality of
Right.
it, we're under a month and we're ticking, down to,
Right.
a remote start on the 16th. And, we'll very closely be just at a month from the first day we receive kids on the 21st. So it's at a place where it's like, you just got to say, you know what, these are the best plans we have. And we're confident in these plans. And that's what we're going to go forward with. And obviously, it just, not that we weren't already vigilant around health and safety, it just raises it another level
Right.
with these interactions, because, I know the precautions we're taking as a school district. I can't speak for every other school district. I know that what we're going to do, but I can't, say that that's happening everywhere. I know that youth athletics has, their own guidance for soccer and things like that. And when you read it, you call into question, how realistic is that? It's, you've got this muscle memory kind of going already. You get on the soccer field, those competitive juices get going, and that first slide tackle, it just instinctively happens. You don't even think about it. How they're going to work through, for example, I hate to stay on soccer, but it's just the one that's most relevant in my brain right now. How do you change out, the soccer balls to keep kids' hands off of them? And and it just keeps going. How do you do all these things? So no, we're going to go forward. Like I said, the vigilance raises a little bit higher. And we're just going to have to really keep our eyes on the metric maps that have now come out. And I think the metric mapping system was very helpful when it came out recently, but it's going to be even more helpful to us now, because we'll be able to really have to keep an eye on surrounding communities and what their levels are, as it relates to their interaction with us. So to be continued.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Sure, thank you.
Chair, is it gonna be possible for teachers who maybe want to be tested for COVID-19 to be tested? Any talk at the state level to make that easy for them to do?
Yeah, so there continues to be chatter, at the state level around making COVID tests, and if what comes out of Yale proves to be really, which is the quick kind of rapid cheek test, the swabbing of the inside of your cheek, if that turns out to be as accurate as they're portraying, I could see that the state would go out and try to procure testing for teachers, and other essential workers. I haven't heard anything beyond the fact that that's a frontline issue for the governor, and I truly believe it is. I think they're just trying to figure out, okay, well, what's an accurate test? Because we also don't want to introduce a test that is proclaimed to do one thing and then it's false negative or false positive and whatever. So I mean, if we have the ability and we have the infrastructure here to do it, in building, that'd be great. I just don't know what that looks like or how we would do it, given the numbers of faculty and kids that we would have in our buildings. But we're very much open to it. We're not at that capacity right now. But that would be a game changer, all the way around if that was available.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Right.
Gail?
I just have one. Casey and the entire leadership team, thank you for all the hard work you're doing. I can't imagine how you even sleep at night with all the changes and things to think about. And
We're not right now. I'm not anyway.
I think I'd be walking the floors.
Yeah.
Thank you ever so much.
No, thank you. And I appreciate that. And, it's, I've said this to other people too. It's just, our kids deserve, the very best we can give them. And that's really what this is about. And people shouldn't lose sight of that. As we're gearing up to start school, all I'm seeing in the press is discussion around teachers and the adults in the equation. And don't get me wrong, they're important. You will hear me say it 100 times. They are the conduit to what our kids can and should be doing in schools. But we also have to keep in mind that the kids, and that's what I think drives us as a leadership team, is trying to put the very best product we have out. I mean, as an example, Dr. Chamberlain right now, she's like I said at the outset of the meeting, she's with 125 of our teachers, in a virtual Zoom, virtual teaching and learning, webinar kind of interactive experience. They're doing that on their own time. We're not paying them. We offered it up. 125 of them are there. There were another 40 of them at the high school doing something similar yesterday on a different matter. So yeah, I mean, it's, you know, like I said, we're blessed that we have great town support, we have great school committee support, we have great families. But yeah, it's a heavy lift right now. So, but we'll get it done.
Any other questions or comments?
Sorry, I actually have one more through the chair, and we probably don't have an answer to this yet, but Reliant, at least Reliant, and I imagine other doctors' offices might be doing this well, have started sending out letters basically saying, we know you need to get your child in, we can't get them in. Is our Department of Public Health able to step in and figure out a way to, especially because I know Meg, in our last meeting, you said that, you know, it was the vaccinations that are really those are non-negotiable at a state level. I mean, who
Yeah.
are we looping to try to help with this? Because
Yeah.
that just came up yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, so through the chair, they right, they are non-negotiable. So those types of things, the state approved vaccination list is what we always check on our students, and we can exclude them from school unless they are, I mean, there's a couple of exceptions. It has to do with, you know, where they're coming from and whether or not, you know, there was ample time for them to, you know, to get vaccination there. But some people get excused on it based on religious preference. But right now, like the pneumonia, you know, that we wish everybody would get, it's not a mandated shot. But it's something that, you know, we would highly encourage, you know, people to get. And speaking with DPH, they're in the process now of trying to figure out how many doses of that they could get and offer free to our community. As you might expect, there's quite a run on that because of all of the, you know, the publicity around the potential for, you know, COVID and influenza to kind of commingle, you know, in the fall and through the winter. But DPH at the town level is working to see how many they can get and offer those free of charge if at all possible, or, you know, offer them as a, you know, nothing more than a co-payment that you would get if you went to your physician's office. So that's part of, I think, the clear and consistent messaging that, you know, we're going to have to start using as we ramp up into school is, you know, the face masks, the hand washing, the social distancing, being vigilant, but also if you have the opportunity to, you know, to get a shot, you know, for the pneumonia, that you should do that. So yeah, so that's another to be continued.
Right. I didn't know that they were actually sending out letters from doctor's offices saying, sorry, we never rescheduled because we were shut down for 2 months. We can't see you till October now, which is
yeah. And so, yeah, so they, in a lot of cases, physicals are now being extended. I think, and Meg would know better probably. I believe they're being extended like 13 to 15 months because, for example, with MIAA rules and regs, your physical is only good for 12 months. So we have students that would be potentially not able to start the season because they wouldn't have an updated medical. And so, yeah, they're running 13 to 15 months.
okay.
The chair, most places also, if like a child is due for vaccinations, will get them in for that. Usually that's what they look at first to make sure that our kids are getting vaccinated. So hopefully that's the case. And there's also a lot of mid-level providers, nurse practitioners and physician's assistants who have picked up and taken appointments. I know my kids, for example, are seeing the nurse practitioner, not their pediatrician, because that's who I could get them in with. And hopefully that's most places are doing that.
Okay, good. No, that's great. I just didn't want to have something come up, you know, a week before school and have 100 kids that aren't vaccinated or something like that.
No, the vaccines really are, I mean, obviously for the younger kids that are starting, but for our older kids, they're pretty much most of their vaccines are done at this point. So yeah, I mean, potentially it would be an issue at the younger levels, but it sounds like from what Meg just said that they could get that squared away.
A lot of those kids through the chair get them actually when they're turning 4, not 5. They're kindergarten vaccines. So that will probably help with the numbers.
Okay.
But yeah, you can get it at either 4 or 5.
Any other discussion? Okay, since Dr. Chamberlain is off doing some PD, as previously mentioned, we will move on to a crowd favorite, business and financial.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Mm.
I again have a very brief report for you. I provided a year-to-date budget report dated August 17, 2020, and I'd be happy to answer any questions on that. And that's about all I have. So,
Wow, short but sweet.
with us meeting every week, it's kind of, it's not,
Yep. And any questions or comments for Cecilia?
No, just nice to see you, Cecilia.
good to see all of you too. I miss every one of you.
You're not kidding, Gail. Thank you for that. Okay, we now move on to policies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a second read before you, the face coverings that we had talked about last week. We had made a couple of changes as requested around making sure that our PK to 1 students were included in that. So that would be, if there was any further discussion on that, I believe it would be ready for a vote.
I would entertain that motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the policy EBCFA face coverings as presented by MASC on second reading.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis,
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington,
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway,
yes.
Mrs. Kaufman,
Yes.
and Mr. Scobie, yes. That is a vote. Thank you. And we do need an executive session. So, Dr. Hanfield, would you please resend that to me? I just checked my email and I didn't see that. So,
Yes, I'd be happy.
that link. Okay. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I can do that. I'll make a motion to enter executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21A2, to conduct strategies for negotiations with union and non-union personnel, namely staff leave requests due to the pandemic.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Dr. McCrillis,
Yes.
Mrs. Harrington,
Yes.
Mrs. Holloway,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaufman,
Yes.
and Mr. Scobie, yes. That is a vote. Good afternoon, everyone.